In the desert between Arizona and Utah, there is a rock formation that does not look carved by time. It looks poured, like the earth was melting, froze mid-motion, and left behind a wave of stone so fluid your brain refuses to believe it is real. In the Arizona-Utah desert, hidden among remote sandstone wilderness, there is a place so visually impossible that people often think they are looking at CGI before they realize it exists in the real world. This is the Wave, a rock formation inside the Coyote Buttes area of the Paria Canyon Vermilion Cliffs region. And the first thing it does to you is simple. It destroys your confidence in what rock is supposed to look like. Because stone is supposed to feel solid, still, and permanent. But here, the ground looks like it is flowing. The walls curve like liquid. The stripes bend like currents. And the whole landscape feels less like geology and more like motion that somehow turned to stone. What makes the Wave so unsettling is not just that it is beautiful. Deserts can be beautiful. Canyons can be beautiful. Sandstone cliffs can be beautiful. What makes this place different is that it feels alive in a way rock should not. The surface twists in smooth ribbons. The color bands sweep across the formation like paint dragged through water. Shadows glide along the curves and make the layers look as if they are still shifting under the sun. It creates a strange mental conflict. Your eyes read movement, but your mind knows the formation is ancient and still. And that gap between what you see and what you know is where the mystery begins. To understand why the Wave looks liquid, you have to go back to a world that existed roughly 190 million years ago, when this region was not a hard desert of stone, but a vast sea of sand dunes. During the Jurassic period, enormous dunes migrated across this landscape under powerful winds, building layers upon layers of sand in slightly different directions. Over immense stretches of time, those dunes were buried, compressed and cemented into sandstone. What you are seeing today is not random shape. It is the preserved anatomy of an ancient dune field, locked into rock and then exposed again after millions of years of uplift, fracture, weathering and erosion. That alone would already be fascinating. But the Wave did not become famous just because it formed from old dunes. It became famous because erosion worked on that sandstone with almost surgical precision. Wind, rain, temperature change, and gravity slowly removed softer material and revealed smoother, more dramatic curves. The result is a formation where the stone seems sculpted, not broken. It lacks the roughness people expect from desert rock. Instead of jagged chaos, it has rhythm. Instead of random fragments, it has flow. The sandstone bends in elegant arcs that mimic water, cloth, smoke, or melted wax. It is geology, but it behaves visually like something fluid, and that is why the brain hesitates when it first sees it. Then there are the colors. The Wave is striped with warm bands of red, orange, gold, pink and cream, and those bands are not decoration. They are part of the story. Tiny differences in mineral content, especially iron oxides, stained the layers over time. As the stone weathered, those colored bands became more visible, tracing the original structure of the ancient dunes. That is why the formation does not just look smooth, it looks designed. The lines curve together so perfectly that they feel intentional, almost too perfect to be natural. But nature does not need intention to create something unforgettable. It only needs time, pressure, chemistry, and patience so extreme that the human mind can barely process it. And that may be the most mind-bending part of all. The Wave looks impossible, not because it breaks the laws of nature, but because it follows them so slowly that the final result feels unreal. We are used to dramatic changes happening fast, Lava flows, water crashes, storms hit, ice breaks. But the wave is what motion looks like when it is stretched across millions of years. It is a frozen memory of movement. Ancient dunes moved, minerals settled, rock hardened, erosion peeled it open. And what remains is a place where time did not just pass, it left visible tracks. When you stand there, you are not seeing one event. You are seeing a sequence of worlds stacked inside one another. That is why photos of the wave spread so aggressively online. It is one of those rare places that triggers the exact reaction the internet loves. Wait, that cannot be real. From certain angles, the curves look like liquid chocolate, draped fabric, painted resin, or an AI-generated fantasy set. And because modern audiences are now surrounded by digital manipulation, the formation feels even more suspicious than it did decades ago. People no longer just ask how it formed. They ask whether it is edited, whether the colors are enhanced, whether the shape is exaggerated. The wave has become one of those locations where reality looks guilty, as if the planet itself has been caught trying too hard to be unbelievable. But seeing it in person changes the feeling completely. The wave is not a roadside stop. It is remote, protected, and deliberately difficult to reach. Access is limited, and that rarity matters. Scarcity adds pressure. Distance adds anticipation. By the time people arrive, they are not just visiting a landscape. They are approaching something they have already imagined in their minds dozens of times. And then the real formation does something unusual. It often exceeds the image, because photographs flatten scale. They cannot fully capture how the curves wrap around you, how the lines pull your eyes forward, or how the silence around the rock makes it feel even stranger. In person, the wave does not feel like a picture. It feels like an encounter. And what makes that encounter powerful is the way it strips away your normal reference points. Most landscapes make sense quickly. Mountain, valley, cliff, lake. Your mind sorts them and moves on. But the wave resists instant understanding. It forces you to study it. The curves do not end where you expect. The bands pull in directions that feel unnatural. The rock seems soft from a distance and impossibly detailed up close. It becomes one of those places that invites a deeper question than, how did this form? It makes you ask why your brain associates certain shapes with life, movement, and fluidity in the first place. Why does a curved line feel active? Why does a ripple imply motion? Why does stone become unsettling the moment it starts looking like it can flow? This is where the impact on modern life becomes impossible to ignore, because the wave is not just a geological wonder. It is now a symbol of how extreme natural beauty moves through the modern world. It fuels travel dreams, viral photography, documentary storytelling, social media obsession, and the growing hunger for places that still feel untouched and unreal. It also reminds us how fragile those places are. A formation that took millions of years to create can be damaged by careless footsteps, overcrowding, and constant exposure. So, the wave sits at the center of a very modern tension. We want to see the most extraordinary places on Earth, but the more attention they receive, the more protection they need. There is also something bigger happening beneath the visual shock. The wave changes how you think about stone itself. Most of us grow up seeing rock as the definition of stillness. It represents weight, permanence, resistance. But this place reveals something deeper. Rock is not the opposite of motion. Rock is motion slowed down. It is wind made solid, sand made memory, pressure made architecture. The wave does not look liquid because it is pretending to be water. It looks liquid because the history inside it was once movement, and that movement never fully disappeared. It only changed form. The desert kept the gesture, even after the material hardened. So, when people call the wave surreal, they are right, but not for the usual reason. It is not surreal because it belongs to another planet. It is surreal because it exposes how strange this planet already is. You do not need aliens, myths, or fantasy to create a place that feels impossible. You only need enough time, enough sand, enough wind, and enough erosion to let Earth reveal what it has been shaping in silence all along. The wave feels like melted stone, because in a way, it is the fossilized trace of a landscape that once moved like a living thing. And when you realize that, the formation stops looking like a trick. It starts looking like a confession from the planet itself. So, the next time someone shows you an image of the wave, and your first instinct is to say that it looks fake, maybe that reaction is the point. Maybe places like this matter, because they break the lazy agreement between your eyes and your mind. Maybe they remind you that reality is far less stable, far less ordinary, and far more dramatic than the human brain likes to assume. Because in this desert, rock does not just sit there. It appears to pour, bend, and breathe. And once you have seen stone behave like liquid, normal landscapes do not feel quite so normal anymore. If this place made you question what rock is supposed to look like this video and subscribe to Off the Map. Because next time, we are going somewhere even more impossible. Next episode, Devil's Tower, Wyoming. Why does this tower rise straight out of the earth? And when you see a giant column of stone standing alone against the sky, the question will not be how tall it is. It will be why it looks like something pushed it up from below.